Hi guys, we are going to talk about, don't have it with me, damn it. We are going to talk about Jaws 2, and I like to refer to this one as Jaws, but with smaller boats. Ha ha ha. Now I had been doing a good job with my Jaws reviews, but then I got sidetracked, and now it's been a very long time, and I have not talked about Jaws in probably over a year, maybe a year and a half. So, remember I'm going in reverse order, so we already did 4 and 3, now we're on 2. I love Jaws 2. I find it to be tied with the first movie, and depending on my mood, one will top the other. So, I watch it as a pick-me-up movie. I watch it as a if I've had a bad day and I need some comfort, that kind of thing. I find the dialogue familiar and reassuring. There are no surprises. I love this movie. I think the biggest difference between the first and the second movie is the shark. You see the shark a ton in this one, and I think not seeing the shark does help the first movie out quite a bit, but I love sharks. I want to see the sharks. So this one just is an overabundance of shark material, and I am here for it. I love it. I find the shark to be delightful. You know, it's just the right amount of looks real and is creepy, and you could imagine what it would be like if there was a shark like that doing the things that it's doing. And, you know, they're in your face about it. I think the shark looked good, but maybe that's just me. It certainly looks much better than the deep blue sea sharks, which are computer-based. There's a scene where Chief Brody is driving down the road and there's a seagull in the road that just kind of slowly walks out of the way, in no big rush, doesn't care. That little detail to me is just so relatable because I live on the lake, and around town seagulls are everywhere. I have grown up with just seagulls being normal. You know, they're in the grocery lot, parking lots, they are at the beach, they fly over the houses. They are just, I love them. I love them so much I named my business after them. And it is typical of a seagull to just not give a shit and just slowly meander out of your way. They are so different from crows. They're some of the biggest birds, but they're also just super, super sensitive and scared about everything. So anyway, that little detail. We do have returning cast. So Roy Scheider returns as Chief Brody, Lorraine Gary returns as Ellen Brody, and Murray Hamilton returns as the mayor. There are new kids because they've aged them in this. The kids are older than they were, and they, you know, if you go by the years, it doesn't really shake out properly, but they do that in soap operas all the time, so why not? And I find Michael to be super annoying. He annoys me more than Sean does, and usually I have a problem with the child actors, but I think Sean is actually a decent kid actor. So Michael and Sean would be Brody's kids. And then Larry Vaughn, the mayor, he has a kid who is Michael's age, Larry Jr. So, you know, he had mentioned in the first movie, my kids were there too. And so now we actually meet Larry Jr. And I loved watching these teenagers. I was 11 years old when I first saw this, and it just seemed like a cool world of older kids day sailing, which this movie made me want to learn how to sail. I wanted to hang out with these teens. I wanted to be their friend. They seemed so cool and so carefree and fun. And we have a huge array of teens in this. Let's see, there's Michael, Andy, Brooke, Jackie, Tina, Eddie, Larry, Bob, Lucy, Mark, Marge, Timmy, Doug. I think there was another one. Polo? So 14 kids that this movie is mostly about, and I love that they shifted the focus onto the kids. And the sailing aspect is just so fun, and all the sails are beautiful colors, and they have different types of sailboats. I am partial to the catamaran style. I like that the best, even though that's probably the most dangerous when you're talking about sharks, because as we see later, the shark rips through the center canvas of this catamaran. I love the relationships, the just ease of dialogue, the connections that people seem to have. They're very natural, and I always appreciate that. You know, you have Roy Scheider and Lauren Gary, and they're dancing at this event, and then she's like, "You want to go home and fool around?" And he nods, and it's just so cute and so normal, and I love their relationship. So there are a lot more death scenes in this movie than there were in the first, and some of them are just glorious. Like, you have the skier who is on a single ski, and you see a lot of the underwater shots. So you could see the ski going along the surface of the water. You're looking from the shark's perspective, and all of a sudden she gets snapped up by the shark and don't know what happened to her. So the person who's driving the boat, she stops and is looking for her skier friend because, you know, water safety. And the shark comes right up and fucking attacks that boat, and she turns around, spills gasoline all over the place, shoots it with a flare gun, and her whole boat explodes. Like, she burns up. The shark has this now really awesome burn face. So he's like the Freddy Krueger of sharks. It's just so different in tone from the first movie. And then, of course, you know, the third movie is pretty laughable when you compare 2 and 3. Although I still love it, and I still defend it. But you had a lot of the underwater shots of skiers and stuff, which I think they utilized by watching that second one. And I love that like, just the skis skating across the water shots. There's a dead orca carcass that... See, and then there's another thing. Eddie and Tina are kind of like probably the main couple that gets focused on, and they're the ones who witness the explosion of this boat, and then they are the ones who find the carcass of the orca on the beach. And then later they will have a huge important scene where Eddie gets eaten by the shark and Tina is left to fend for herself. And it's just kind of funny that all these things happen to this one couple. But they stumble upon this orca.
Will you take this down, please?
No more sailing today, okay? And I'd like you to come back with me.
We came out in my boat.
Yeah, but Andy will take it back.
Got a date.
She'll understand.
No, she won't.
Mike, for Christ's sakes, give me a break here, will you?
And it's been eaten in certain ways, but it hasn't been totally eaten. And you're thinking, oh, large shark. And that's when Brody starts forming this idea that, yeah, we have another shark on our hands. And I always thought that the marine biologist was so, I don't know, off-putting. I just never liked her. She's so know-it-all and obnoxious. And so Brody is convinced that it's a shark. She's like, well, maybe it's not. Maybe it's another orca, or maybe it is a shark. I just don't know.
I know that dolphins communicate. I mean, they send signals. You don't think that if a shark was destroyed, that another shark could come in?
Sharks don't take things personally, Mr. Brody.
So there's a whole thing where Brody, again, is put in the position where he wants to deal with this because he thinks it's a shark. No one wants to believe him. Larry even tells him, don't press it this time. And it's like, but he was right last time. He was right to close the beaches and to want to kill this shark, you know? Like, cut him some slack. It's not like in the first one he was wrong and, you know, he's doing it again and you're saying, hey, stop it now. You know, he was right last time. And he's right this time. So there's the whole bureaucracy aspect where they don't want to deal with the shark problem. No one will believe Brody. He gets fired after shooting at some fish, a school of fish that he thought was the actual shark. And he gets fired. Hendricks, who is the deputy, he assumes the position of chief. And there's this scene that I only just noticed after watching this movie hundreds of times. He comes home drunk. Brody does. He comes home drunk after having been fired, and he stops at his front door and looks at this yellow barrel. Yellow barrel. It's a planter on the side of his house, and that's one of the yellow barrels that he floated home on. I'm positive it has to be. There's no way, there's no coincidence there. You don't have a yellow barrel planter. No. That is so cool. How did I never notice that? How did I never notice that? It blew my mind. See, this is why I rewatch things all the time, because there are little things that you just don't catch. There are things that you could watch thousands of times, like this, and so the big part of the movie is when the kids go day sailing, and they go in a group. Michael has been told he's not allowed because, you know, Martin's worried about the shark. He's worried about all these boating things that have been happening, people disappearing, and, you know, he just doesn't want Michael involved. Michael wakes up early to go to the lighthouse with his friends, and Sean catches him and threatens to tell their parents if he doesn't take him along. So now Sean is with him. So the two of them sneak out. They're going to have this, like, kind of a picnic at the lighthouse. So everyone gets in their respective sailboats. I think it ends up being, I don't know, like half a dozen or more sailboats, all heading out in a convoy. And already they start separating. Eddie and Tina hold back. That's when Eddie gets eaten, which is one of my favorite scenes.
Hurry, Eddie, it's a shark! Eddie, hurry! Faster! Come on, swim! Hurry! Hurry, Eddie!
The violence of it is so shocking. You know, he and Tina are sitting there, the shark hits the boat and knocks Eddie out, and then it pulls Tina away. So she's floating there. Eddie is kind of confused and hasn't started moving toward the boat yet, which was a mistake. And then she sees that the shark is what did it, and the shark is coming toward him. So the shark grabs him, throws him into the boat, and it's just like this high speed crazy thing, and there's a huge impact that you could just, it's a sickening sound. He hits the side of the boat, tries to climb up, he breaks off a piece of the boat, and he's just gone. He's gone, he's eaten, the water turns red. I love that scene. It was one of those delightfully terrifying things, like, holy shit, this shark is not messing around. You know, and that's not normal shark behavior, but it works. So then you see the shark heading toward the rest of the kids, following them in their little convoy. He's like the little caboose. So they head out to the lighthouse, and Michael yells, "I know of a better spot. Let's keep going." So they should have just stuck with the lighthouse to begin with, but they didn't. They keep going. And I'm sorry, but later when we see what Michael had planned, because Cable Junction is the place where they end up. And that's the place that Michael had referenced. He's like, I know a better place, let's keep going. And Cable Junction sucks. It's rocky. There's nothing flat to lay blankets out on. It's a small island. It's just super, super dumb to have decided not to go to the lighthouse with a wide beach area to hang out in and to walk around, and I don't know. It was really dumb. Plus it's all rocky, and how are you going to land all of your sailboats and tie them up? I don't know, it's weird. Ellen and Martin are driving into town. They see an ambulance. They head out there. They find some divers. Hendrix is trying to figure out what to do. He mentions that the kids have gone out sailing, and they find out that Michael is one of the kids. So Brody's like, you have to take us. You have to take us out on the police boat. So the three of them head out. they run into Eddie and Tina, and for some reason, Martin is like, I'm gonna call this boat over. So he hails this other boat to come and take Hendrix and Ellen to shore. And Brody is gonna go on, Martin is gonna go on and find the kids himself. Well, shouldn't he have taken Hendrix with him and had at least one other person? Ellen and Tina could have gone back with the other boat. I don't know. So Brody is, gonna do this on his own, and he's like, where do we go? And Hendrix is like, you do this and this and this.
About 10 degrees off your starboard bow. Take a heading leeward of Sand Island.
Don't give me that shit point!
There.
All right, I got it.
I love that line so much. And it just has some comedic lightning of the situation, which I appreciate. So there is a huge clusterfuck, which I cannot imagine the choreography for this, and I am always impressed. If I only had time to watch part of this movie, that's probably where I would start the movie. There's this Keith Gordon's character, Doug. He is standing there and he is reinflating one of his rafts. So he's standing there, all of a sudden the shark comes up and hits him. So his boat goes over, he's in the water, he's trying to swim to another boat and get pulled up out of the water. There are boats that are confused and the people are crashing into each other, so the boats are just, some are tipping over, some are ramming into other ones, so the boats are just almost impossible now to extract from each other and to sail, because they are now a floating mass of just garbage. And so everyone eventually gets back onto their respective boats, or, other people have picked them up and helped them onto their boats. Mike is still out there. Luckily, he's one of the only people wearing a life jacket. He and Sean are wearing life jackets. I think Bob is also wearing a life jacket. And everyone notices that Mike is still just hanging out, swimming, floating there because he hit his head. So they have to try and get him into a boat. So there's one that can sail. They go over to Mike and they're trying to pull him up, and it's a very tense situation because they're, slipping. They're trying to grab him and they can't get purchase on his life jacket, really. So they manage to get him up out of the water just as the shark is coming, and it opens its mouth and brushes the side of the boat, which is an awesome shot. I know people mock it, but I think it's well done, and I would like to see people do it better. So they get Mike on the boat, and they're like, okay, can you sail? Take Mike to a doctor. And it's like, why not take Sean? Sean is this little kid who's not going to weigh anything. Put him in the boat too. I am sure they could have fit at least 2 or 3 other people in that boat and still been safe to sail. Just saying. So these kids now are floating. They're floating aimlessly toward Cable Junction. They really can't steer very well. They have a mess that they're dealing with. And eventually they get to the bottom. They get to a shallower place, and the sailboats that have flipped over, the masts are now scraping on the bottom, and they're kind of like rooted there. They're stuck. So everyone is kind of worried, yet they feel better because they can't drift past Cable Junction. And this helicopter comes because the Coast Guard has been notified. And every time I see this, I think the helicopter just gets a little bit higher off the water. He ties a rope to the helicopter. They have a rope tied to their sailboat mess. And he starts to lift off. The shark jumps up and attacks him. There's all this flying shrapnel. It decimates the sails. It's really intense and graphic. And so now the people are like, okay, now what? It kind of knocks some of them into the water again. Marge is one who ends up going into the water because Sean gets knocked off, and he swims the wrong way. He swims toward an upended boat that's slippery, and he tries to climb up. She's pushing him up, and then he gets there. She's trying to get help from him, pulling her onto this thing, so good luck with that. And the shark just comes up right behind her, and we don't see it from the front perspective, we see it from behind, and he just swallows her. And Sean is like 2 feet away, and he is seeing this. And that was always one of my favorite parts. So then Sean is basically almost catatonic. They have to get him back, which is a disaster. See, they should have just sent him along. Yeah, Brody comes, he saves the day. He first crashes into the rocky parts of Cable Junction because the shark surprised him. He got kind of distracted and just runs aground, and that's not good. His boat doesn't work anymore, so he pulls out this inflatable raft, and he goes out, and all these other people start swimming to the shore.
Oh my God, no! No!
He manages to pull out this cable, this huge electrical cable, and he gets the shark to bite down on it. It sparks and it sizzles and it steams, and then it's over. It's over. And I just think there's so much action in this movie, so much good stuff. I love it. It is entertaining. It's pleasing to the eye. I enjoy all the colors and the fun banter. And it's just, I don't know, it's such a lighthearted movie. It's not like a dark horror movie. It takes place in broad daylight most of the time. And it's fun. It's a fun movie. So I highly recommend it. Have a spooky day. When everyone abandons the ships and starts swimming to Cable Junction, the only people left on the floating sailboat chaos pile are Jackie and Sean. And Jackie is annoying as fuck. Jackie is so annoying. I understand hysterics and all, but I just want to slap her. Someone should have slapped her. Larry Jr. almost slapped her. He should have. He should have done it.